Thank you, Dr. Vadera, and thanks for the attention, and thanks for all these excellent questions so far. So I'm going to move to talk about new generation basal insulins, and also this new therapy that we now have, insulin GLP-1 combination. So one injection a day can bring most of our diabetes patients, quite a lot of our diabetes patients, to their target A1C. These are my disclosures. So these are the learning objectives for today's presentation. So to review mechanisms of action and data on the newest basal insulins, assess the similarity and differences between the basal insulins, the new generation, which as we know are U300 Lantus and Tresiba, and also review the mechanism of action of insulin GLP-1 combinations, and discuss the safety and data around those. Also, one slide I will have about how to improve insulin adherence and initiation of insulin use. So before I go on to the insulin thing, we have been talking a lot about mindful eating. I just wanted to bring to attention about mindful consumption because we are living in an era of excess and the holidays are coming along. So health, mindfulness, everything is linked together, including mindfulness eating and mindful consumption, because it affects our environment and affects our health in the long run, because the consumption, mindless consumption, is causing these too many chemicals in our environment, and they are known to be endocrine disruptors. So they disrupt our endocrine system completely, and that is why we are seeing an increased incidence of cancers, increase of diabetes, hypertension, all these chronic diseases. So what can we do? We can do simple things. We can reduce our use of gift baskets, plastic packaging, doing mindless shopping on Black Friday just because Amazon is selling it, for less. Candies and chocolates, we keep giving each other candies and chocolates which we are not supposed to eat anyways. So why don't we just stop it? There's no use. No comments, no comments. So what can we do instead? We could be, giving each other some healthy snacks such as nuts, books, excellent gifts, handwritten cards, gift cards for experiences such as movie theater, dinner, plays, entertainment venues, sports. If you really love somebody, you can give them Maple Leaf tickets, very expensive. Or donate to charity in somebody's honor. Why do we have to keep exercising mindless consumption just because we can? So now I'll move on to my insulin talk. So moving on to John, who's on max doses of oral agents. He has type 2 diabetes for a long time, and his A1C is out of control. He's 8.6%. EGFR is 49, so he has moderate chronic kidney disease. So what are his options? His LDL is okay, his blood pressure is okay. So what do you think you would do next for him? He's already on metformin, sulfonylurea, GLP-1 agonist, ACE inhibitor, statins, and an SGLT2 inhibitor as well. So what is the next line of treatment for him? Would you consider insulin for him? Yeah, I think most people agree that you might want to consider insulin. So I have a question. So why does the duration of action of different types of insulin, short-acting versus long-acting versus intermediate-acting, differ? Is it because there's a difference in duration of action of insulin on the insulin receptor, or is it because there's a difference in the rate of absorption from the subcutaneous depot? So, or is it both of the above? So how many would say A? None. How about B? Some. Okay, Dr. Weinecke is forcefully recommending B. And how about C? So a lot of people have said C. So we have an even split between B and C. So I would say it is B, that it is the difference in absorption from the subcutaneous depot. Once the insulin gets into the bloodstream, all insulin molecules act the same way at the insulin receptor. It's the degree to the rate at which they get absorbed from the subcutaneous depot. And that is why they put all these different molecules attached to insulin to make that rate variable. Or they substitute the amino acids from the insulin molecule to make that rate of absorption differ. So now we move on to the second generation basal insulins. So what are the second generation basal insulins? So we know that this is the history of insulin. So the first insulin was discovered almost 100 years ago here in Toronto, as we all know, received the Nobel Prize for that. And then that was the regular insulin. That is a short-acting or 6-hour duration of action of insulin. Now, they added protamine zinc to that insulin to make it last longer in the subcutaneous tissue. And then neutral protamine H-TON was added to increase the duration of action. And then lenti insulin came along. And after about 80 years or so, the first analog insulins came in 2000 called glargine, which was in around 1960s, recombinant human insulin came along, wherein they were able to make the insulin in the lab using plasmid DNA, bacterial DNA recombination techniques. But the analog insulin was not the same structure as the human insulin. A couple of amino acids were substituted to change the property of the insulin in the subcutaneous depot. And so the glargine came along and Levemir came along. And after 15 years or so, the concentrated version of glargine, which we know as Toujeo, and a newer insulin called Degludec, which is Tresiba, have come along. And here is the difference in duration of action for all these insulins. So if we look here, NPH insulin works for about 12 to 16 hours. It peaks around 6 to 8 hours. And then we had insulin glargine, which is this, which peaks around about 8 to 10 hours, lasts for about 22 to 24 hours. And we had insulin Levemir, which again peaked a little bit around 6 to 8 hours and then lasted for 18 to 22 hours. Now we have these gray bars, gray lines of Toujeo and Tresiba, which do not peak and they last for more than 24 hours. So that is why we have made that leap in terms of the true basal insulins which we have now, which are flat action profile and which last for a long time, greater than 1 day. So how does that happen? So the way it happens with Toujeo or U300 insulin is that the volume of the depot has been reduced by 1/3. So therefore, the enzymes in the subcutaneous tissue have less surface area to act on. Therefore, it slows the absorption of insulin molecules into the bloodstream from that depot. Therefore, the action profile is flatter and the duration of action is longer from that depot. And also, it reduces the amount of volume that is injected into the stomach or subcutaneous tissue, and it basically is more convenient for patients in terms of the pressure that they need to inject that bolus. Especially more so for patients who inject large volumes, large units of insulin. What happens with insulin Degludec or Tresiba? It's a different mechanism wherein in the injection, in the vial, there are dihexamers. So 6 insulin molecules form a hexamer, and 2 of them, they form together dihexamer, bound by zinc and phenol. So when the injection is in the subcutaneous depot, they form multi-hexamers, they come together. And then slowly the zinc and the phenol diffuse away into the subcutaneous tissue, and the monomers, they basically get released into the blood circulation, bound to albumin. So that's how these 2 longer acting insulins help have that flatter, longer duration of action. And we can see that here comparing to Lantus, Toujeo, there's a flatter duration of action for lasting for up to 36 hours. Half-life is 21 to 24 hours, and steady state is reached in about 4 days. And Tresiba, half-life is similar, about 25 hours, and the duration of action is 42 hours. Now again, both of these insulins are not given at 36 hours or 42 hours, every 42 hours or so. They are given every day because it is hard for any patient to remember taking it every 42 hours. People remember to take it fixed time every day. The other thing is we note that the half-life is 24 hours. So what happens is every time we inject, by the next day, 50% has gone out of the system. So after reaching steady state, somebody's on 20 units, let's say, they have reached steady state. When they inject 20 units today, by tomorrow morning, they will have 10 units left in their system. So when they inject another 20, so after the 3rd day, they will have half of 30, so that's 15. So after a while, the amount of insulin that they inject, the same amount is degraded in the next 24 hours. So therefore, a steady state is reached, and therefore there is no stacking of these insulins. We don't like get hypoglycemia because of stacking. What about the benefit of using these insulins compared to Lantus, which was the gold standard until a few years ago? There is less hypoglycemia. So the blue bar is Lantus and the green bar is Toujeo. So there is less hypoglycemia across the board from baseline to month 6. And how do we put that in clinical terms? For every 15 people initiated and treated with Toujeo versus Lantus, 1 less patient has hypoglycemia. So that means your number needed to treat is about 15, which is pretty nice.
That's excellent.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah. And same thing about nocturnal hypoglycemia. We see that less hypoglycemia with Toujeo versus Lantus, and the number needed to treat was about 10 subjects for reducing 1 episode of nocturnal hypoglycemia, which is even more important because people can lose consciousness, people can have seizures, and it could be a very serious situation with some of our patients. What about Tresiba versus Lantus? So we also saw benefits with reduction in hypoglycemia with that. So we see in the BEGIN trials, the pooled analysis, which shows that overall confirmed hypoglycemia and nocturnal hypoglycemia was reduced, and severe hypoglycemia was reduced but not statistically significant. Switch study also showed similar trends, and the DEVOTE study, which was a long-term cardiovascular study, also showed that severe and nocturnal hypoglycemia was reduced. So both of these insulins, compared to Lantus, reduce the incidence of hypoglycemia. Now, how do these insulins compare to each other? Are there any head-to-head clinical trials comparing Toujeo to Tresiba? So we are going to go over the 2 trials that were done comparing them to each other. They were done in different populations. One, the BRIGHT study comparing Toujeo to Tresiba was done in insulin-naive patients. So these patients were never on insulin. They were on oral agents or GLP-1 molecules. So we'll go do the review the BRIGHT study first, followed by the CONCLUDE study, which was done in insulin patients who were on insulin. So the title of the study was More Similarities Than Differences Between U300 Glargine, which is Toujeo, versus Degludec or Tresiba. So this was the trial design, type 2 duration for more than 1 year, adult patients, A1C 7.5 to 10.5, and they were randomized to either Toujeo or Tresiba. The titration phase was 12 weeks, followed by another 12 weeks of maintenance duration. So what were the endpoints? The A1C lowering was similar between the Toujeo, which is green, and Tresiba, which is blue line, from 8.5 or so to about 7% at 24 weeks, which is pretty significant. That the bars also show the same thing. So the primary endpoint was efficacy in lowering A1C, and that was met in this trial. What about fasting and plasma glucose profiles postprandially? So both the agents, the self-monitored glucose profiles were similar in the 2 groups, both fasting and postprandial. What about hypoglycemia? So hypoglycemia during the full study period was similar in both groups between Tresiba and Toujeo. And the maintenance period also was similar, hypoglycemia in the 2 groups. However, in the titration phase, there was slightly less anytime hypoglycemia with Toujeo versus Tresiba, and we can see that here. How about nocturnal hypoglycemia? Again, during the full study period and the maintenance period, there was no significant difference in nocturnal hypoglycemia. However, in the titration phase, there was a very slight difference in the hypoglycemia efficacy in Toujeo versus Tresiba, just barely meeting statistical significance. So these are hypothesis-generating data, which we cannot really say there was a definite change, but there was hypothesis-generating data. Also, there was sub-analysis about efficacy and safety in patients with renal dysfunction, and what they found was that patients who had EGFR more than 90, they had similar lowering of A1C in both groups. However, in patients with EGFR less than 60, the A1C lowering was about 0.43% lower with U300 Glargine or Toujeo compared to Tresiba. Now, whether this was at the expense of high risk of hypoglycemia, that was also looked at, And in this group, less than 60 eGFR, the hypoglycemia rates between the two groups was similar, so the line crossed unity in less than 60 and in all the different types of hypoglycemic cut endpoints. The reason it's important is because renal dysfunction increases risk of hypoglycemia, increases risk of cardiovascular outcomes. So therefore, this study provides the reassurance that renal patients can be safely used on these newer insulins. Moving on to the CONCLUDE study, which was again a head-to-head study with slightly different population. So what was the population that was studied? The study was including type 2 diabetes patients aged more than 18 years, A1C less than 9.5%. They are on insulin plus oral agents, and they are at increased risk for hypoglycemia. And some of the factors that were inclusion criteria for increased risk of hypoglycemia was, again, chronic kidney disease, any incidence of severe hypoglycemic episode in the last 1 year, any episodes of hypoglycemic unawareness, and there were a couple of other factors which increase hypoglycemia risk. The trial design was open label randomized, and the patients were randomized to either insulin degludec or Tresiba or to JO. So there was an amendment done in the study because of the meter that was used initially in the first 20 to 25 weeks of the study. There were reports by the patients that the readings given by that meter were faulty. So the trial had to be amended midway. So pre-amendment, the trial was supposed to last for 52 weeks, 16-week titration period and 36 weeks maintenance period and a 30-day follow-up. After the amendment, the trial had to be modified because the meter was faulty. People were reporting hypoglycemic symptoms, but the meter was showing normal readings. So therefore, the trial had to be amended with a new meter. And the new trial looked like this. There was a variable maintenance period because some people were on less duration and some people were on more duration when the trial was amended. And then there was another new 36 weeks maintenance period was added based on the new meter. So the total treatment period was extended to a total of 88 weeks. And the primary outcomes was number of severe or blood glucose confirmed symptomatic hypoglycemic episodes. So that was a primary outcome, and there were some exploratory secondary outcomes. And what did the study show? That the primary outcome of overall symptomatic hypoglycemia was similar in the both groups, and there was no statistical difference in the primary outcome. In the secondary outcomes or exploratory outcomes, because once the primary outcome does not meet statistical significance, the other outcomes are considered exploratory, and there was some difference in severe hypoglycemia, nocturnal hypoglycemia, and overall hypoglycemia in the Tresiba arm compared to TOUJEO. So what is the bottom line? I will get to that in the next slide. How about A1C lowering? The efficacy of A1C lowering was similar, 7.1% end of study with TOUJEO and 7.0% with Tresiba, so similar A1C lowering. The dose of insulin was slightly higher with TOUJEO versus Tresiba. That is because the TOUJEO bolus sits in the skin for a longer time and therefore can be degraded a little bit more. So therefore, some people may require about 10 to 15% extra dose. That's how that happened. However, the weight gain for TOUJEO versus Tresiba was similar, with a little bit less weight gain for glargine or TOUJEO versus Tresiba. So even though the patients were on higher dose of insulin, they did not gain more weight because, again, the higher dose of insulin is because of more degradation in the subcutaneous depot. So what do we have takeaway from these two studies? That second generation basal insulins address barriers in type 2 diabetes. There is more stable, flatter, longer action profile, comparable glycemic control based on the head-to-head studies. There are similar glycemic control, A1C lowering was similar, and there is favorable hypoglycemic profile. Less hypoglycemia than Lantus, and BRIGHT study showed some benefit with hypoglycemia during the titration phase, and CONCLUDE study did not show any difference in the hypoglycemia primary endpoint. Some secondary endpoints showed benefit with Tresiba, but these are exploratory outcomes because the primary outcome was not statistically significant. So basically, both insulins work well compared to Lantus. Yes, Dr. Vainaki.
I just have a comment here, and we have some pharmacists here, so maybe they can
Mm-hmm.
Clinical. So if I choose Tresiba,
Okay.
is there a difference in the price between 100 and 200?
So if the question is whether there's a difference between.
I'm going to tell you why. Because if you start somebody on a basal,
Mm-hmm.
you choose one over the other.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm finding, at least in long-term care, is that the pharmacists send over the 200, and you can only titrate by 2. And if you use the rule of 10%, so if somebody's on 60 of Lantus,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to increase it, you go 10%, you go to 66. Somebody's on 10, you go to 11, you go to 12. And you can't do that with the Degludec.
Yes. So there are two parts to your question.
2 units.
Yes. So there are two parts to your question. So there are two parts to your question. One is that whether the price difference between U100 and U200. The unit per unit price is the same. So the reason the U200 pen might be more expensive than the U100 pen is because it contains 600 units of Tresiba versus 300 units of Tresiba. So that is why the price will be double, but it will last longer.
So as a GP, you should specify it, because if you're starting, and you're starting at 10 units, whatever, you should start with the, if you're going to choose Tresiba,
That is correct.
you should start with the 100.
That is correct. If you're starting, if your patient is on a low dose and you are starting Tresiba, then it has to be U100 because it can be titrated by 1 unit at a time.
I know for a fact that pharmacies send 200.
No, you have to write U100 then. I give the prescriptions over U100.
Can I get a comment from the pharmacist here?
Any comments from the pharmacists?
Stand up and speak.
I suspect that the U200 was like expense during the time when it wasn't widely known of the difference between the two plans.
Not a lot of people know this. I mean, diabetes gurus don't know this. And so if you're starting at 10 and you're going up by one
I start at U100. I give them
you
U100.
can't do it
Yes.
if they prescribe the 200.
So the Tresiba comes in U100 and U200 concentrations, and Toujeo comes only in U300.
Yeah.
So with Toujeo, there is no, you don't have to choose between U100 or U200. Tresiba comes between U100 and U200, and the U200 pen carries more insulin, and it can be titrated by 2 units at a time versus, the Toujeo one, you can start with 10 units and titrate by 1 unit at a time. So moving on to John, so he should basically start a second generation insulin, whether Toujeo or Tresiba, and then he should be followed up closely for hypoglycemic risk. So moving on, last 5 minutes of my presentation would be on insulin GLP-1 combinations. How many here in the audience have used one of the insulin GLP-1 combinations? There are 2 available. One is Soliqua and the other one is Zoltofi. Has anyone ever used them here? Waiting for ODB. Okay. But yes, Dr. Kapoor has used it. Okay. So I'm going to talk about how can they be a useful tool in our diabetes management. So there are 2 available combinations available in Canada. One is Soliqua, which is combination of insulin glargine plus lixisenatide, which is a GLP-1 analog, and the other one is Zoltofi, which is insulin degludec, or Tresiba plus liraglutide, which is also known as Victoza. So why is the combination, how does it work? What is the mechanism of action? So we know that the basal insulin targets fasting blood sugars, and it targets the hepatic glucose overproduction by decreasing gluconeogenesis overnight. Therefore, the fasting blood sugar is targeted by basal insulin. And GLP-1s basically target glucagon secretion, and they delay gastric emptying, and they decrease the postprandial glucose excursions. So that's why these 2 agents have complementary mechanism for action. Therefore, combining them in one device, one pen, makes it more convenient for the patient, and it targets both fasting and postprandial glucose control. So what are the advantages? So basal insulin analogs and GLP-1 agonists, we know that how do they work? Weight loading effects of GLP-1s and insulins can increase weight. So when they come together, they neutralize some of the weight gain. So convenience is one titratable single daily injection. Powerful glucose lowering with reduced glycemic variability, because GLP-1s have been shown to reduce the glycemic variability. And then there is slower titration is very important, because GLP-1 we know can cause nausea. So what studies have shown that are that if we use GLP-1 isolatedly versus using them in a combination, because of the slow titration of insulin, the GLP-1 titration is much slower with these combinations than with the GLP-1 titration that we do otherwise. So therefore, the GI side effects of nausea and vomiting are about maybe 8 to 10% with these versus about 20-25% with using GLP-1 alone. So therefore, that is a very good minimization of side effects. And there's also lower risk of hypoglycemia compared to bolus insulin and insulin without a GLP-1, and that has been shown as well. And they also result in weight loss or weight neutrality compared to using insulin or either basal insulin alone or basal plus bolus insulin. So looking at some of the evidence, so there is Lixi-Lan-L trial, which was adding the combination on either background Lantus or Lixi-Lan-O, adding combination on background oral agents. So what was the benefit? A1C reduction with the combination was minus 1.1 versus Lantus alone. And the patients at target A1C were much higher with the combination versus 30% with Lantus alone. This was patients who were already on Lantus who continued Lantus versus those who were switched to the combination. So no change in the number of injections per day, just the change in pen led to 55% achieving target. What about Lixi-Lan-O? This was patients who were on oral agents alone who were given the combination versus Lantus alone, and we saw an A1C lowering of minus 1.6. So baseline was 8.1, so if we lower it by minus 1.6, most patients were able to reach less than 7%, and quite a few of them were able to reach less than 6.5%, so which is 56%, which is a huge number, just adding one injection a day. Weight change was neutral with the combination, gained weight with the insulin alone, and lost weight with the GLP-1 alone, which we expect. And hypoglycemia risk was higher with insulins, but not significantly higher with the combination versus basal insulin, and was lower with GLP-1 alone, which also is expected. Now, this is interesting. How many would expect that if we add a GLP-1 to insulin versus basal insulin plus 3 injections of prandial insulin, which one would be more efficacious? So who would say here that insulin plus 3 injections, basal insulin plus 3 injections of prandial insulin would be more efficacious than basal insulin plus GLP-1? Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Taking it?
Yeah.
They're taking
Yeah.
the bolus 3 times?
Yeah, 3 times a bolus plus basal versus who would favor 3 times a bolus, 3 times of bolus plus basal? Or who would say basal plus GLP-1? So that will be more efficacious. And who will say both will be the same?
So here's the question.
Yes.
Does it matter how long you've been diabetic?
It matters, yeah.
For 20 years.
Yes.
You decide, you know what, I'm going to try a GLP-1 agonist.
Yes.
Does that matter? Does it matter how long you've been
Yes,
diabetic?
it depends on your insulin reserve. Yes, absolutely. Yes, reserve.
Right. So
some people have, even if they have
so at
diabetes for
what
20
time-
years.
At what time in your diagnosis of diabetes would you really not consider a GLP-1?
So we'll come to that in the, at the end. Yeah. So with this study, they basically had 3 arms. One was insulin glargine plus lixisenatide once daily. So that was a combination versus 1 injection of prandial insulin plus glargine or 3 injections of prandial insulin plus glargine. And to sum the study results, from 8.5%, all 3 arms were basically reaching 7 to 7.2%. So having 1 injection of insulin plus GLP-1 basically was the same efficacy as having 3 more bolus injections with less hypoglycemia and less weight gain. So this is a technique that we can use for quite a few of our patients. And if they do not have insulin reserve, then they will not respond. Some people do need prandial coverage, so then we can move on to that next level. What about Zoltofi or insulin degludec plus liraglutide? Similar results we saw. This was subjects with type 2 diabetes uncontrolled on basal insulin in the Dual 5 study. And what they saw was an A1C lowering of minus 1.7% versus 0.9% with insulin alone. So again, the dual therapy was significantly lower versus insulin alone. Basal plus GLP-1 Again, we saw the same thing. So the insulin GLP-1, one pen, one injection, one test of SMBGs versus basal bolus, two pens, 2 to 4 injections a day, and 2 to 4 tests. Both of them were efficacy was similar. So it's pretty significant that these combination therapies that we have, which can bring most of our patients to target. And we already discussed this, so I'll move on to my last slide about how to improve insulin initiation and adherence. This was a talk presented at the ADA this year by Dr. Polonsky, who does a lot of psychological work in diabetes. And they studied patients and saw which factors were the most likely to improve insulin initiation and adherence. And the factors that are most popular or most useful by patients, rated by patients, was demonstrating the injection process in the clinic or at the diabetes education center, where somebody gives the patient the first shot, or demonstrate how it feels. Because most of my patients, when they come, they're saying, oh no, I don't want insulin, I don't want injection. But when I give them an empty shot or give them an actual insulin shot right there, then they say, that's it, that was it. I mean, their whole thing changes right away. So, so giving that, or instead of prescribing it and going home, and then they will be like shivering at home, trying to inject themselves, it just overcomes that barrier. Even pharmacies, in the pharmacy level, pharmacists can have that patient deliver the first shot, in front of them, so that the patients can get over that initial first injection fear. And explaining benefits helps, collaborative style helps, and dispelling insulin myths helps. What are your thoughts? What do you think about insulin? What are your misconceptions? So that helps in addressing those barriers. However, telling them that I would not continue to see you if you refuse to start insulin doesn't really help. Only 50% found it helpful, which it worked in 50%, so it's not that bad. So summary, second generation basal insulins reduce risk of hypoglycemia compared to previous generation insulins. U300 Lantus, Toujeo, and Tresiba were similar in efficacy and safety. There were minor differences in secondary outcomes in the BRIGHT and CONCLUDE study, for which we will need further evidence. Insulin GLP-1 combinations are efficacious, convenient, and have less GI side effects. And the demonstration of insulin injection, collaborative style, and dispelling myths helps patients improve insulin initiation and adherence. Thank you. Dr. Vainak, Dr. Kapoor raised her hand first, so Dr. Kapoor. Can we have the mic, please, for Dr. Kapoor? Okay. Okay. That's fine. No, absolutely. That's completely, that's the right thing to do. As long as somebody is teaching the patient how to do it and administering them that first injection, helping them do that. Absolutely. I think you're doing, or pharmacy, even pharmacists can help. Thank you. Dr. Weinecke?